Okay, hi everybody. So this is the well, I guess it's week 7, because next week is going to be our last week of this foundations class. So we're going to be talking today. Last week we talked about sharing your story and how that relates to sponsorship and making sure that you give yourself enough credit for having a story that's going to impact people and inspire people. And we talked about the I am, but, and so, or I was, but, and so kind of starters for your story. So hopefully you had some time this week to work on that, craft your story a little bit, even have a party or two to practice sharing your story. Because that's really what is going to help you sponsor and build your team is people being drawn into Trades of Hope because of the mission and because of you. And I really believe that it is kind of equal parts. And, people want to be, they say in direct sales that people join, because of the product or because of the company or because of the mission, but then they ultimately stay because they feel connected and they feel part of a team and they feel connected to their sponsor. So building that relationship by immediately inspiring somebody with your personal story is really the edge that we have in direct sales, and then especially in Trades of Hope, because if you can couple your story and your life with what we're doing, and then somebody else sees themselves in that, then you'll be unstoppable. I think that I've emphasized quite a few times, and I'm going to emphasize it forever and ever, that we are not immune to the industry standards. We are part of a direct selling company, and so the numbers play a huge part in that. And you have to be the best compassionate entrepreneur that you can be. You have to kind of work the numbers, and so if you're not asking enough people, like if you're struggling with sponsoring or you're struggling with booking parties, my first question would be, well, how many people have you asked? And if you've only asked 5 people, well, of course you've gotten no's, because it's going to take at least 10 to get to the yes. And that's, I don't care what you're selling or what you're sharing. If you're not asking enough people, then yes, you are going to be struggling. You're not going to be getting to the yes because there's not enough people. Everybody has sponsored somebody who underestimated the work involved and overestimated the rewards. I've sponsored lots of people who, thought they were going to be making, something they saw their cousin in Jamberry at the peak make $30,000 a month or whatever it was, and they wanted to build that in 2 months, and what do I have to do to get there? So they've overestimated the rewards and then underestimated the amount of work that it takes to get there. I can proudly say that I've built a very substantial, wonderful business and income, but it has also taken me, I calculated it today, or I asked Siri today, it's been 1,786 days, I think, since I became a compassionate entrepreneur. So it's been a lot of days, and it's been daily disciplines and work, but the reward has been great. So I just think, that you got to be wary of people that come in and, how do I get there fast? Well, there's not necessarily fast in Trades of Hope, and so your business will be a revolving door. And that's actually really healthy. And so if you're feeling like that, if you're like, wow, I've sponsored 3 people and none of them have actually, taken off or done anything with their business, or they just had one party and then that was it, that's actually okay. It's not you. It's not anything that you've done or haven't done, especially if you've shared the app and the Smart Start goals and encourage them to book their first party, then everybody's a grown-up in this scenario. And so it's okay. They say that 1 in 6, to talk more numbers, 1 in 6 people will start to actually build a business. So if you haven't even sponsored your first 6 people, then I wouldn't expect you to have an active branch at this point. You can kind of count on the numbers, and that if you are bringing a steady flow of people into your business and you've got that and you're asking enough people, then you can count on those numbers kind of sticking. So rather than fight against them, I think, you kind of go with them. 1 in 10 are going to say yes, 1 in 6 are going to work. Okay, well, that makes it, that sets my level of expectation at something that I can manage. So that means I need to be sponsoring, probably more than I am. I also think that some people look at the 4 areas of our business: booking, selling, sponsoring, and continuing education, and they find that booking and selling and even continuing education, showing up for a wake-up call or a training call or showing up for this class or watching this video later, those are like the easy things. But the sponsoring piece seems to be a lot of people's frog. If you don't know the expression, it's a Mark Twain quote: if you eat a live frog first thing in the morning, then nothing worse can happen to you the rest of the day. The concept of eating your frog first is, to me, really awesome, because everybody's got a frog on their to-do list. We've all got that thing that you put on your to-do list like every morning, and then it gets bumped to the end, and then it gets bumped to the next day, and then it gets bumped to the next day. And then, I've had frogs that have followed me around for like months that I just have not swallowed and tackled, because everybody has those tasks that you don't love doing, so they get bumped to the end. And if there's not enough time or you've run out of time, then they don't get done at all. Well, isn't it kind of terrible? And I'm not saying I haven't done this, but that sponsorship, which is the most powerful thing that we can do as compassionate entrepreneurs, it is the most impactful thing that we can do. When we sponsor a new compassionate entrepreneur and she starts her business, there is a direct correlation to a job being created. And we are in the mission of creating jobs to empower women out of poverty. It is the tantamount, most important aspect of our company, our business, and our mission. And yet, sponsoring becomes the frog that most of us kind of avoid. And I think that there's an issue there. I think there's a real disconnect. And I was just chatting with the masterclass about 2018 is going to be the year that we break through that frog feeling of sponsoring, and we really take ownership of the fact that sponsorship is the greatest way that we can impact our mission. And we work together to find those words, and we don't gloss over it anymore. That we share our story and we create sparks, that we ignite people's fires, and we bring them into Trades of Hope to become world changers. I think making it our goal to excite people, to inspire people, to make people feel like they could do what we're doing, or that they would love doing something like what we're doing, or that it sounds like their dream job, or it sounds amazing. Like, that's a really fun thing to do. We talk about giving hope to the artisans all the time, but what about giving hope to somebody who's sitting there miserable in her current situation because she has nothing that lights her fire? And I think a lot of women out there go through their daily grind and their daily, taking care of the kids and doing the laundry and feeding schlepping the kids around. I spend more time in my car than I like to admit schlepping kids from point A to point B, and they're little. We've got activities, but good grief. We're not even in like the height of activities. I see when kids turn 16, it's like, oh, thank God, like they can finally drive themselves, like I can understand that. But there's not a lot of like fire and passion in mom duties sometimes, or even the job that you have. If there's women sitting in front of you that actually have jobs and work full time, maybe they don't love their job, and or they just want that other thing that's filling the gap. And I think if we can get to a point where we almost are like addicted to igniting people's fires and filling in people's gap, then we can be unstoppable when it comes to sponsorship as individuals and as a team and as a company. So the gap, everybody has a gap. So what drives people is not what they have. What you have is like your comfort zone. It's like what's around you. It's not something that's necessarily driving you. What drives you is the gap between what you have and what you want. And it doesn't necessarily, I think a lot of times it's not material things. What you want is something that's intangible, or something that's more about a feeling, or something, that just like our artisans, it's not a basic need. It's something more about dignity and pride and doing work that makes you feel inspired or challenged. And so I think that, discovering people's gaps is a skill that we all need to work on as compassionate entrepreneurs. So asking interesting questions, like if you had $1,000 in your pocket right now, what would you spend it on? Or if you could make one personal wish come true, what would it be? Or if you could make your family dream come true, what would that be? Discovering what it is that is sitting in that gap, and then helping possibly put Trades of Hope as the vehicle that drives them from where they are to where they want to be, is really what sponsorship is all about. I also think you need to go after successful people. I see this all the time, and I see it in myself too. I mean, we've all got those friends that were like, they would never want to be a compassionate entrepreneur, or I go to morning prayer every day at my son's school, and there's tons of parents around, and I do it too. I make judgments about, they're clearly dressed, going to some corporate job, and they're clicking away in their high heels, and they wouldn't want to be a compassionate entrepreneur. But how do I know? And maybe those people would be the most successful compassionate entrepreneurs out there. I think we need to not shy away from anybody because we think they're too successful already. You just don't know. I also think that a skill we all need to work on is, because we're all so passionate and we're like gushing with statistics and information and stuff, is kind of holding back a little bit. When you're talking about igniting somebody's fire, you don't want to pour so much on it that you actually squelch the fire before they've even had a chance to get it started. You can suffocate a fire, right? Like, I'm not an expert at building fires, but I know that it needs some space to breathe to actually start to ignite and grow. So you have to be kind of patient with lighting a fire. And so you don't have to spill all the beans. You don't have to tell everything about everything in the opportunity chat, or when you're sitting at checkout and somebody like expresses the tiny bit of interest of being a compassionate entrepreneur, and you're like all over them, you will suffocate them. Don't do that. If you're thinking about a fire, it takes time. You've got to get those little twigs to catch on and to start to build the base for the bigger fire. You got to keep it smoldering, and always have that possibility of learning more. I mean, I would not have been a compassionate entrepreneur for 1,746 days if I felt like I knew everything already. I still wake up excited to learn something new, and honestly, my friend who sponsored me, she didn't tell me anything at the beginning, like literally nothing. She had never sponsored anybody before. And so that was actually probably a good thing, because she didn't talk to me about sponsoring. She didn't talk to me about building a team. She didn't talk to me about like the compensation plan, like literally nothing. And so I learned it all as I went, and I found excitement in that. I actually enjoyed discovering things as I went along. And I think if she had told me everything to begin with, then that might have kind of squelched my fire a little bit. So, I think that it's okay to, you have to give yourself permission to just kind of be cool with people, be chill, like tell them, let them kind of guide what they want to know. And what do they need to know now, is very different than like the big picture and all the information. And there's joy in the discovery of knowledge. You don't have to provide them with everything. You have to show them the resources, but give them the chance to discover it. And I don't think we allow ourselves to do that as much. You are constantly surrounded by people that want to be compassionate entrepreneurs. But I will tell you that kind of the top people that you can kind of put your radars on, obviously your hostesses. I've sponsored many hostesses in the past. But I will say that sometimes hostesses just need to stay hostesses. I've got some amazing, amazing hostesses who will always be great, great hostesses. I shared this in some message feed yesterday. I've got this hostess who she just had her 4th annual holiday party, and she was kind of like, I don't know if it's going to be as good this year. it's about to break $3,000 in sales. So she is a great hostess, and I will keep her as a hostess as long as she'll have me. So she's already booked her party for next year. She's super excited. But very often hostesses do become great compassionate entrepreneurs. I was a hostess first. Party guests, obviously, they are there. They showed up at the party. They took the time to be there. That is your best pool for potential compassionate entrepreneurs, which is why you need to have parties so that you can meet these hostesses and party guests. Existing customers, people that buy from you regularly, people that like your stuff, that are, kind of engaged in what you're doing, you can keep your radar in tune to them. And then other people that you can just sort of add to your pool of potential compassionate entrepreneurs. Teachers, tons and tons of compassionate entrepreneurs are current or former teachers, myself included. Jess Argetsinger, the other national director, Jill Butler, one of the executive directors, former teacher, like so many teachers all over this business. Artistic and creative people, certainly with what we sell, because it's handmade, artisanal pieces, creative and artistic people are going to be drawn to it. Plus they tend to be outside of the box thinkers. So in terms of a business, there's a more entrepreneurial spirit, potentially in artistic and creative people. Nurses, tons of nurses in Trades of Hope. They make wonderful compassionate entrepreneurs. Engineers, former cheerleaders, former direct sellers, and moms. So these are just areas of your life where you're like, if you're chatting with somebody and they're like, yeah, I used to sell whatever. Great. I love people that used to sell whatever, because they already have a foundation of direct sales. Saves me some time, to helping them understand the business. But whatever, those are just kind of some categories of people that you can perk your ears to. But no matter who you're talking to or who you're approaching about becoming a compassionate entrepreneur, you got to keep that relationship at the forefront. People don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. People want to know that you're not just after what you want from them. And so you've got to make sure that before you approach somebody, you can say to them, I'm calling you because, or I wanted to talk to you because I really admire you, or you always look amazing and I'd love to have you, be a hostess and model at the party. Your experiences would help others. What if you've got a friend who's always doing amazing mission work, or is in the adoption world, or has, always doing fundraising or philanthropic things. Like, your experiences would help others. They might help me in my business, but you might be able to be a wonderful compassionate entrepreneur and help others with your skills. I always enjoy talking to you. You're one of my favorite hostesses or customers. That's a wonderful compliment to somebody, that you like talking to them. I'm talking to you because your party was amazing and your friends are awesome. You would be a natural at being a compassionate entrepreneur. I mean, I've said that so many times to people, like, you should just do this. Your friends are incredible. They love you. Clearly you have support. You should just get a Kik coupon and start your business. Or it'd be really fun for us to work together. There's some people on my team that, like, I just like being friends with, and I kind of want them to keep being compassionate entrepreneurs so that we can hang out more. But whatever the reason is, it's got to be sincere and genuine, and you've got to find that reason. If you can't find that genuine and sincere compliment or reason why you think they would be a great compassionate entrepreneur, then don't talk to them. You're not ready to speak to them yet. You've got to come at the conversation from a place of total sincerity and appreciation for who they are and why you think they would be a great compassionate entrepreneur. And then when somebody sort of objects to it or says, oh, I don't think I would be very good at it, or I don't want to sound salesy, or I'm too busy, don't argue with the objection and don't ignore it. Because those are two things that I think sometimes we try to do because we think you got to save the conversation. But I actually think when somebody says, I don't really see myself as a salesperson, you don't want to say, oh, you'd be great at it, because then you're like diminishing their feelings. And so, you know, if somebody says, I don't see myself as a salesperson, you could say, well, you actually don't come across as a salesperson. You're incredibly genuine and sincere, and that's why I think you'd be good at what we do. Or, you know, I'm just way too busy. You know, oh yeah, I totally understand. I've got, you know, a lot going on, you know, and I really have to work to find those pockets of time where I can do my business or whatever it is. But, you know, you don't want to ignore objections. You want to allow them space and kind of honor them in a way, because every single person that you sponsor is going to have some fear or apprehension or nervousness, because it's a brand new thing that they're talking about putting into their life. And I don't know a single person out there who doesn't already have a full life, even if they are looking for something, even if they, you know, if they have that gap, they still need to know that it's the right thing to get them from what they want to, or from what they have to what they want. And so you got to give that space some time. And when somebody says no, this is from Mary Christensen. She says, don't ever say, well, I'll be here when you change your mind. She says to say, well, I'm sure you get asked all the time. Something like that. You don't want them to feel bad for saying no, or like, you know, I'll be here if you change your mind. And I've said that before, so oh well. And so then you get to the yes. I mean, once in a while you get to the yes, especially if you're doing all that work and you're sharing your story, you're igniting those fires, you're letting the fire smolder, you're doing good follow-up, you're seeking out those potential CEs, you're working those relationships, you're asking, and then finally somebody says yes. And honestly, it's still like the greatest, most fun thing when somebody joins your team and decides to get their kit, and you get that email that says, congratulations, and you know, your team is growing, and you're like, yes. And then you begin to, when you begin to sponsor, then you begin to bring new people on with, you know, the, what's the best way to get somebody really started in their business. And this has been a process for me, but most recently, and you know, in this past year, I've really simplified the way that I bring a new person on. I try to do a welcome interview with them and focus on their excitement and their why. I want to understand why they became a compassionate entrepreneur. You know, I want to let them do the talking. It's so funny because so often the conversation is exactly the same, but I just stay quiet and listen. But they're, you know, people, everybody says the same things. Like, I just love how, you know, we're helping women, and I love, you know, that I can do something from right where I am. And, you know, it's like, yep, that's what we're doing. Yep, that's Trains of Hope. You're in the right place. You know, I mean, it's like, it's cool because I hear the same words spoken, person to person. But, you know, I really want to connect with them. I want to understand why they're there and what they want, and just encourage their excitement, you know, especially that kit's going to be coming in the mail, and here's what you can do in the meantime. And then I really just focus on 3 things for the beginning of their business. I want them to familiarize themselves with Smart Start. I want them to download and jump into the app or the back office training track. And I want them to schedule a launch party, either for themselves as the hostess or with an actual hostess. And that's kind of enough for the beginning. You don't want to rush into too much training. You want to come up with an exciting goal, something that's like small and attainable within the first couple of months. You want to make sure you understand what her gap is. What is it that she wants? You know, what is keeping her from what she has and getting her to where she wants? The fastest route out of any direct selling business is disappointment. And for a lot of people, it comes really, really fast. Like, it'll come in those first few weeks or months. And it'll certainly come through the Smart Start. And so you have to be prepared as a sponsor. You know, you've probably experienced the same disappointment. So how did it make you feel? And how did you get out of that funk? That's why when you have that first conversation, if you're focused on understanding what makes her excited, then you can revisit those things when her first disappointment inevitably comes. You know, as leaders, they say it's not naive. Positive thinking as a leader is not naive. It's good leadership. You know, you've got to be able to turn negatives into teachable moments, positive experiences, you know, growth opportunities. I mean, that's what good leaders do. You find the good, you help somebody through a roadblock. And most of the time, it's based on something that you have experienced first that then you're able to turn around and help somebody see to the other side of. But if you don't have that relationship and you don't understand why she's part of Trades of Hope, and you haven't encouraged her excitement, then it's going to be hard when that first disappointment comes through to help her through it, because you're not invested in that relationship enough. Okay, I've got a little bit more, but it's already 10:38. So next week I'm going to finish the last little bit of this sponsorship conversation, and then our last topic is walking the talk and working smarter. So I'm excited for sharing the thoughts I have on that, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you, guys.